Begin the current Daf, Mesech Bava Kama Daf Kof Hey. We begin 8 lines down at the top of the Yomid. But the Gemara continues to explain the halach of our previous Mishnah, which again, like the topic of this parak, and again, we're talking about this above Bava Kama with the Avis Mazikim, which again, one of them is Gizela. So we're talking about this parak regarding how Gezel Eitzim spoke about in the Mishnah regarding the liabilities of a Gazlan as it applies to a Shvua. So we mentioned that regarding the obligation of paying back the person and going after him even till Madai, so he said that that's only if there's the Karen. But if there's less than the Shava Prut of Karen, then we said you don't have to go all the way to him to return it. And the Gemara is going to qualify and limit that exemption of that teaching. Throughout the entire world. So discussing today's daf are the halacha of ein gezela b'pachad m'shava pruta. Robbery is not liable for less than the shava pruta, and that relates to halacha of our Mishnah that we said if he's machalai or all the other cases he paid him chutz mipachad shava pruta b'karen, except meaning that he's not he doesn't have anything more than less than the shava pruta. In tzarch leilach it doesn't have to go after him. The Gemara is going to make a differentiation between she'en gezela kiyemes or gezela kiyemes. Depends if the stolen object is there. If the stolen object is there, then even when it's less than the pruta, you'd still be obligated to return it. Which that gets us into a very interesting conversation in the Gemara regarding the first case is the case that we're discussing. Then we get into a few other cases. Let's say gazel shtei agudis bepruta. Let's say you steal 2 bundles that's worth a pruta. He gives him back one of them. What's the halacha? The question is now the other one is less than the shava pruta, and he said by gzeila there's no obligation of returning less than the shava pruta. Do you say that since originally it was in the value of pruta, you have the obligation of returning it, or do you say now that one was returned, now you have less than the shava pruta? And the Gemara gets into a few of these types of questions that, like, okay, now there's only, let's say there was 2 hairs you have to cut by as a mitzvah. Now there's only 1 hair left. So the question is, what do you do in those type of situations? Then the Gemara continues regarding nishba lamahu. What's halacha in a case that really, let's say by gazel chamas v'avlav pesach, we could say arishal chal fanecha. So you'd be pater if you gave it back as it is. But instead he makes a claim and he swears that he doesn't have it. So the question is, and that's the one that takes us to Ahmed Beis, that he's not really stealing anything because it's anyways asa b'hana, but he would be exempt. The question is what the halacha is going to be in that type of a case. The Gemara tells that if someone denies a deposit, something that was watching for someone else, he's immediately considered like a ganav, and he's responsible for any incident that happens because now that he's denying, he's already chayv v'naitzin. And the Gemara, however, makes a differentiation between if it's b'kaima b'agam, if it's in a swamp somewhere, then we say actually he might be kashal edis because he might just be pushing the guy off. He doesn't really plan on stealing it. And that's the theory for hakoifa b'milvo kashal edis. So when someone denies alone, says, no, I didn't borrow money from you, he's also kashal edis because it doesn't mean he's really stealing. He's just trying to buy time till he could go ahead and get the money to pay back for that loan. So we begin the current Daf Kof Hey, 8 lines down at the top of the Yomid. We said in the Mishnah, if, let's say, a person stole someone's item, the Nigzel forgave the item aside for a small portion that is chutz, quotes the Gemara from the Mishnah, that's worth less than 1 pruta, etc. So the Mishnah told us the Gazlan is not obligated to return this to the Nigzel. Rather, he keeps it until the Nigzel claims it because there's no gezela for less than 1 pruta. However, Amar Papa, he qualifies this teaching, and he says, Loishon, we didn't learn this teaching, that you don't have to give it back when it's less than the Shava Pruta, Elisha in Gezela, that half a Pruta that you stole, that you're left owing him because he was Michael everything else, let's say, or you paid everything else back, only if that's not Kayemes. It's not around from the stolen item itself. It's now the value of a half a Pruta that you owe him, but there's not the actual money there. That's where we say, okay, the value of a half a pruta, you're not going to be chayav to pay him up. But if from the stolen item itself, whatever you stole a bunch of tchotchkes, and you have 1 tchotchke that's worth less than a pruta, says Rav Papa, interesting halacha. He said, you would have to go after him to give it back. Do you know why? So he says a svara. He says, not really because you're chayav, because it was once more or whatever. No, because chashin Hashem b'tiyakar. We're concerned that maybe the price will rise, and therefore it will be a value of a pruta, which then you have a chiv to return it. So because of that concern, right now you have to return it even though it's worth less than a pruta. That's one version. Ikadama doesn't say actually no. Papa says no. It doesn't make a difference if the object is around. If it's not around, then you only owe the value of a half a pruta. Even if the stolen item is here, that one little puppet or whatever it is, one thing less than a pruta, you don't have to go after him. We're not concerned for maybe it's going to go up in price. So again, that seems to be the two different versions. Are we concerned for such a thing or not? That is the discussion. And that would be the two different versions if you have to go return it now when it's worth less than a pruta. Now, a related discussion, Amarava. So this is also interesting. He says like this, Gazel Shalish Agudis. Let's say a person stole 3 bundles. That's worth Bishalish Prutas. They're worth 3 prutas. You know, when the Lower East Side, when you grew up, when everything was cheap, you had things that could be a pruta. A bundle was worth a pruta. 3 bundles for 3 prutas. Okay? V'huzlu. Now the price of these bundles went down. V'amdu al shtayim. It's worth 2 prutas. Says Rava the following idea. Im hichzu shtayim. If you return 2 of the bundles, you're still chayav lahachzuloi. You still have to give him back the bundle acheres, the 3rd bundle. What's the chiddush? So Rashi tells us. Even though right now that 3rd bundle is not worth a pruta, so this seems to be different than what Rav Papa said before. Rav Papa said, even though it's worth less than a pruta, the reason why you would have to return it is because we're concerned the price might go up. Rava is saying, the way Rashi is saying, is that no, since at the time of the gezela, I mean, it's a different case also, it was worth a pruta, you have to return it and go after him. So here, it's not because of Shemet Yakir. Here, it was worth a pruta. So even though now it's worth less than the pruta, you have to go and give it back. Which the top Taisa says, meaning if the object is around, you have to return it. If not, so then you have to pay him a Shava pruta, like the way it was worth what's called B'shas Gezela. We're saying in this whole parak that the Gazlan pays Keshas Gezela, which it was worth a pruta. Which the truth is, says Taisus, you didn't have to be so dramatic, Rava. You could have said a case when the guy stole 1 bundle, and that 1 bundle went down to less than the pruta, where he would give back a bundle or its value. But he's saying a chiddush. Even by 3, where you're, as we're going to see shortly in the Gemara, the concept that's really being discussed is the mitzvah of Hashavas Agzela. He is fulfilling the Hashavas Agzela with the other 2 bundles. Even so, the last bundle, which is less than the pruta, he still has to give it back. Now, what's interesting is, even though the Gemara says right now, B'tana Tuna, which means to say that the Tana of our Mishnah, which on Daf Tzadik Vav base supports this teaching of Rava, says Taisus, it doesn't sound like from that Mishnah, the Chiddush of Rava. It only talks about when you steal 1 item and it goes down. That's the Chiddush of Rava, that he's saying on his own Svara, that the same thing would be by 3, but that's why he's picking 3 to say an added Chiddush, even though you're doing Yar Shabbos Exela, and now you're worth less than the pruta, even so, you would have to give back that 3rd one. So what do we see, B'tana Tuna, from a Mishnah Daf Tzadik Vav Mevez? Mishnah says like this, Gazal Chametz, if someone stole Chametz, and V'avar Lava Pesach, and it's already past Pesach, and now it's obviously Asabana. So Aymalai tells him, Harisha Chalafanecha. Here, this is yours. He gives him back all the Twinkies, he gives him back all these Danishes that he stole from him. Now, says the Gemara, time of the Isa Be'ene. The reason is because that all those Twinkies are still there. Hales Be'ene, because you're saying Harish Chalafanecha, here's yours in front of you. It sounds like if it wasn't there, Avagav Dahashalav Mamoina, even though now it's not worth any money because it's after Pesach, you gotta throw it out. Kivin to Mikara Mamoina, who since in the beginning when he stole it, it was worth money, right? He stole it Purim time. Then he stole the truck full of the Twinkies. It was worth money then. But Yishlumi, you have to pay. Oh, even though this 3rd bundle is not worth a pruta, but given the Mikar Rabbi Pruta, since originally it was worth a pruta, it just went down the price. By Yishlumi, you would have to pay. So you see interesting support for Rabba's teaching from the halacha of Chametz Sha'avala Pesach, the guy stole, that he has to pay back, even though it's not worth anything, but because it was worth before. Also, when the price goes down, there's the same idea that you would have to give back, even though now it's not worth a pruta. Now, a similar type of a discussion, which opens us up.
The chametz that someone is
it becomes asa b'hana.
Is asa b'hana even for a goy, the salad of goy, after Pesach?
Yeah. You're not allowed to have hana with it. It's asa. If you had chametz that
You yourself can't have hana from
right.
the etzem chametz, but you can sell it.
No, that's having hana.
Mamish, it's trash.
Yeah. I mean, that's the basic halacha. That's why we're very careful for everyone to write, to sell their chametz just in case, whatever. So, Rabbi has the following question. What happens if someone stole 2 bundles that was worth a pruta? This opens up a whole conversation with similar types of questions that in different contexts. And he gives back one of the bundles. Now, what's the halachas? What's the question? So the Gemara explains. Meaning, do we say hashta leka gzela? Meaning, there is no stolen object by him. Why? Because pay attention to the case. Here, even when he stole it, it wasn't worth a Shabbat Pruta. 2 bundles were worth a Pruta. And he gave back one of them. So he doesn't have quote-unquote gizela by him, because in gizela pachad Shabbat Pruta. I mean, if you hold like Reb Papa or L'Shamatiyaka, you have to know maybe would that be part of the conversation. But even if that would be, that would mean concern. But Lamaisa, right now, he has no gizela by him. So maybe he doesn't have to return it. Maybe no. No, he never returned the stolen pruta that was by him because he only gave back half of it. So you would have to give back the other half. So what's the halacha? To give back one, does he have to give back the other one? That was the question that Rav had asked. Hada pashta. He subsequently answered the question, and he said, "Gezela inkan." There's no gezela over here, because right there's less than a shava pruta. There's no gezela less than a shava pruta. Hashava inkan. There's no returning. The Gemara says, how do you? That doesn't make sense. I gezela inkan. If there's no stealing here, hashava yashkan. I mean that means you did return. I mean there's nothing that you don't have to return. What do you mean there's no returning? So the Gemara says, no, what we're saying is like this. Even though there is no rob, there's no stolen goods by you, because it's worth less than a shava pruta, mitzvahs hashava einkan. There's still no mitzvah of hashava. What does that mean? So Tais explains that it says that they're not coming to answer the question. It's just that it's not ma'akiv the mitzvah of hashava, and you're right because there's no gezela. But it means that you would not makam the mitzvah of hashava. So although there's no gezela, but you didn't do the mitzvah hashava either. So therefore, the Gemara is saying that you weren't makam your hashava at least, in giving back half of the gezela. A similar type of a question, Amar Rava. Rava says as follows: Hari Amar, they said in the Goyim, Nazir shegilech, if a Nazir cuts his hair. And the shiur said the Nazir has to cut off all his hair when he finishes Nazirs. He leaves over 2 hairs. Now 2 hairs is the minimum that, or the maximum, it depends how you say it, that you didn't fulfill your Nazirs. And so says the Mishnah, hasn't done anything because there's still 2 hairs. That means to say there's still, if 1 hair, it's not a problem. 2 hairs is like you didn't cut your hair off yet. Now, Rava has the following question: what happens if gilach achas? Sometimes you cut off one of the 2 hairs that was remaining, v'nashra achas, and the last one falls out. Now, what's halacha? Is that considered that you did a giluach? Did you do the mitzvah of cutting the hair? That's the question. So, Amalei Rabbi Ravina says, what do you mean? Nazir shegilach, a nazir that cut off all his hair, achas, one at a time. Coming by Rava, that's Rava's question. In other words, of course that's giluach, because when he was cutting to cut off the remaining 2 hairs, there was a shiur of a giluach. You have to have a shiur. In giluach pachas mishnayim, you can't to consider a haircut can't be less than 2 hairs. But in this case, when he cut this 1 hair, even though the second one fell out, that first hair that he cut was a giluach because there was 2 hairs to cut. If there was only 1 hair left, you'd say, okay, he never cut it because even if he cut it, you can't do cutting less. It's not called giluach less than 2. It's not significant enough. But here there was 2 left, and he cut one, and the second one fell out. So he did a giluach on that second to the last one. So what's the problem? Why wouldn't that be considered as a giluach? So Amalei says,
how much time was that? Does it matter?
doesn't seem to make a difference. Is like when he cut it, he cut that, and the last one fell out. So, but he did a giluach. So what's the problem? So Amalei says, no, it has to be the other way around. One of them fell out, the giluch achas, and then he cut the last one. So when he was coming to cut, there was no quote unquote shiur giluach. There was not enough. There was one here left, and that's not considered as a valid giluach. So the question is like this: Mimrin, do we say hashtemiyas or like a shiur? So now there's nothing left. So therefore he'd be pater. Like maybe no halav giluachu, or maybe no, you never cut your hair. Because originally you left over 2 hairs, which that means you never did your giluach yet. And now when he did cut, it wasn't 2 hairs, so you're not pater. So you're stuck because there are certain limitations, and those has until he does a giluach. You never did the giluach. So that's the question: did you do it because the mice there's nothing here, or do you say that no, you never cut the hair because when you originally cut, you left 2 hairs and you didn't do it, and now even when there were 2 hairs, you didn't do it either because 1 hair fell out. When you come to cut the last one, that's not considered as a cutting. So Had Pashto subsequently answered the question. He says, Sar Inkan, there's no here, over here. How do you say here? But Giluach Inkan. And so there's no cutting over here. So the Gemara asked the same type of question. That doesn't make sense. Isar Inkan, if there's no here, over here, Giluach Yeshkan, then there is a Giluach, meaning it means you cut it off. So the Gemara says, Nachim, this is what I was saying is like this. Afa Pisha Sar Inkan. No, even though there's no here, mitzvah giluach inkan. There is no mitzvah of giluach. So Taisa explains. He says that means that it's ma'akiv. It holds back this nazar from drinking wine, being metamal mason, as if he never did a giluach. In other words, according to the one who holds the giluach is ma'akiv, that only after that is the nazar allowed to drink wine. You actually can't until you grow here again and cut it down. You can't because you never did a giluach. Or Taisa says another pshat. It's actually regarding the mitzvah. You weren't mekayim the mitzvah of giluach, and therefore it's even according to everyone that even though you're not limited to the other things because you're finishing the Naziris already, but you never did the mitzvah of giluach, even though the hair is not over here. Another.
You could say hairdo.
Hairdo, I mean like do as in Yiddish,
Here.
or hairdo.
Hairdo, like hairdo.
Right, a hairdo or do as in here because. So another case again the similar idea. Says V'amar Rava. Says Arei Amru. There's a Mishnah Masechet Kelim that says Chavish and Nikfa. If you have a barrel that has a hole in it, V'stamua shemarim, and you clogged it up with sediments, which it's like the pulp that's from the bottom of the wine pressing. Now Rashi and Taisus have a machlekes how to explain the case, but Rashi says that you put this barrel on a skylight and you smooth it very well all around, and there's tumah in the house. So hitzilua, that barrel saves the upper story from having tumah come over there, because the barrel, which is a kli cheres, is makabel tumah only from the inside, and therefore it serves as a barrier to block the tumah from the first floor coming to the second floor, because the clogging of the sediments is considered clogging, and therefore there's no way for the tumah to get through to the interior of the kli cheres of the barrel, so it acts as a barrier. That's the halacha of Mishnah Masechet Kelim. Now, by Rabbi Raz, the following question again, the same idea. Agav chetz yemahu. What's the halacha if he clogged up half of it, meaning you had beneath the barrel a measurement of a hole to receive tumah. Now, a kli that's makabel tumah is not going to separate, make a barrier in front of the tumah. But then they took some clay and they clogged up half of that hole. What's the halacha? So what's the question? So Rashi explains. Do we say that right now you don't have the measurement of a hole? I mean, there's a certain size that we consider as a valid hole that the tumah could come through. Now it's not a hole. Or do you say that no, he didn't close it up a full measurement of closing it up? That's the question. So again, similar to the previous questions. So only Rabbi Yirmiyah Rav Ashi says, "What mean lav Mishnah seinu hizu? Isn't this our Mishnah?" That's not. The Mishnah over there in Kalim says, "Chavis shenikva." If you have a barrel that has a hole, v'stamu shemarim, and you close it up with these sediments, it's ilua, so that saves the tumah from coming through. Pakaka bizmayra. Let's say you close it up with vines. There's no sediments. So then it's achi mereach. Then it's only if you take enough clay from the sides of the branches to really close up the hole very well. Let's say there were 2 vines. Achi mereach, when it's done, then you have to take some clay from the sides and in between one branch and the other one. Okay, that's what the Mishnah says. It says Rabbi Yirmiyah that time with the marach sounds like the reason because he smears clay all around. If it didn't, then not. Why? It should be like closing up half it, and now the hole is not big enough. Obviously, closing up half, even though the hole's not big enough, it's not good enough because you didn't close it up all the way. Somebody said, no, how could you compare? There it's a technical reason. If you don't smear clay around the branches, it's not going to stay. But if you close up the hole with something that will last, it will last, and if it could stay, so it didn't really answer our question. If you could clog it up halfway, would they say that okay, the hole is not big enough, and therefore the tumah is not going to come through? Or do we say no, you didn't close it up to make it to a non-hole anymore, and therefore until you do that, it's not going to be a valid closing of the hole, and they will still have the tumah coming through. Yeah, because you didn't really seal it. It's still considered that original nekev, and that's the question. Like similar to the geluach, you have to cut the hairs. Right.
I understand. So you didn't close it all the way, but it seems like you didn't do enough to geluach. There's a sheet. You have to do 2 hairs. If not, it's not a geluach.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So that's what Taisus discussed a little bit. The bottom one, where he says that Tema Hechadamya. How could you compare this question to the questions that were asked before? Since you closed it, there's no hole. Why would the steamer not help? Why is it different if you never had this hole in the first place? That's what Taisus is asking that question. So he says that since it has the hole, this at the end of Taisus, it says even though it was closed up with the sediments, it's not really a stim mal yasi. It's not you have shamarim sediments. It's like it didn't really close it up. But to say from Tumah, it would be a stim mal yasi. So this is differentiating. He's basically saying it's not really as if you really. It's it's still there. Put it this way. When you do it halfway, it's like you didn't really close it. It's as if the hole is still there.
So you're going to close in half. What's the problem closing more?
No, meaning if you close the whole thing, it sounds like that then you plugged it up. It sounds like a half a plug is not a plug. It's like you didn't do anything. The whole we still see the whole hole. Again with whole here.
And maybe something can seep through, so it's not really complete.
Yeah, could be. But the Gemara is saying that no, we don't have to say like the case of the branches. They're saying you are closing up half it, but it sounds like that's not going to be a full-fledged steamer. Yeah, so that's a good question, but that's what it seems like. That's the discussion that we would view it as if it's not necessarily, and that's what the Gemara says. We didn't resolve that question. Another conversation, but Va'amar Rava again, he says Hare Amru, which we quoted this Mishnah just before, the Mishnah of Tzadi Vav Mabeis. They said, Gazal chametz v'avlav Pesach. If someone steals chametz, and now it's already after Pesach, he wants to do tshuva, you can tell the guy, I stole from here, here's your chametz, it's yours for you. And that's it, you don't have to pay him anything. But by Rabbi has also an interesting question, as we continue on the days. He says, what happens if nishba? What happens if, after it became forbidden, it's already after Pesach, he swears to the victim that he doesn't have his truck of cinnamon danishes, and he didn't steal it from him. Ma, what's the halacha? So what's the question? So the Gemara explains. Mimrin, do we say kimin de imignev? If it would be stolen from the ganav, boy shlumile, then he would have to pay to the nigzal a truckload of cinnamon danishes because he owes it to him. It's only when the chametz is here, he could give back the chametz as it is, that you could say Rishal Chalafanecha. But if, let's say, that would be stolen from him, he would have to pay him actual money. So that means to say he actually is denying money because it would have a monetary value if it was stolen from the Goslin.
This is why I asked before, is there a value comments after Pesach? You said he stole it before Pesach, and now he's swearing after Pesach.
This case is where he stole before.
You need to say that he'd be responsible to return the comments after Pesach.
Right, it has no value. Yeah, exactly. It has no value.
Still has to return it.
Yeah, because that's the stolen
The
object.
point is less than Shabbat Fruta.
No, it's because this is what I stole. I'm giving you back what I stole, even though it's asabano right now. But I'm giving you back harishal chalafanecha. It might be grandma. We spoke about these things, but I'm giving you back what I stole. But what we're saying is that if the guy would swear falsely, which he's got to be crazy to do that, but let's say he wants to hold his reputation, says, no, it's not true, I never stole it. Do we consider this as having a halacha of a shvua of kfiras mammon, where it's not, you could say it has monetary value because if it was stolen from him, it would have a value because he would have to now pay to the victim money? No, hashtamias hamanach. Look, it's laying over here. He could exempt himself by just giving it back. But after ba'almo, it's like it's shtoib, it's earth. It has no value because asabana. But look, cover money. This is not denying money. There's no value to it. I could just give back this thing.
Increase the value.
It's not increasing. It's just it's questioning if that denial is a denial of money or not. On the one hand, it's a denial of money because if this was stolen from me, I would have to pay $5,000 for this truckload of cinnamon danishes. On the other hand, you say, but it doesn't have value right now because it's not worth the piyasta because it's azmana. So is it a kfiras mammon? Is it a denial of money or not? That was the question. So the Gemara said, this that was a question to Rava was pshita leil Rabba, was obvious to Rabba. Why? Because Rabba said the following halacha. He says, if let's say someone says, Sheiri ganafta, you stole my ox. He says, I didn't steal it. So then the guy says, the mativa yatzlacha. Then what's it doing by you? So he says, what do you mean? Shemachin man love. Why do I have your ox? I was watching it for you for free. And he swears to that effect. And then he actually ends up admitting and he says, it's not true, you're right, I did steal it. Chayiv is going to be chayiv a carbon for his shvua that he swore, even though that he admitted before the oath regarding that he owed him the money, right? He never denied that he owed him the money. He was just saying, I'm a shomer. I was watching it for you. Of course it's yours. I owe you this money because I'm watching it for you for free. But he was lying about the fact that why did he have it? He was saying, I'm just watching it for you. And then he swears to that fact. And then he ends up and he says, that's right, I did steal it. So he's chayiv a carbon for that shvuah. Why? So he explains, because Sharei Pater Atzmai, because he was exempting himself with this oath. When he was swearing that he's a Shemer Chinam, he was exempting himself Megneva Va'aveda. Meaning, if it would have been stolen from him after he made that shvuah, he would have gotten off the hook with his lie, because he's not a Shemer Chinam. He himself stole it. And Ganav is chayiv all einzin until he returns it to him. So it was a denial of money. Not really, because he really was admitting that it's the guy's. But he was denying in the sense by saying he's a Shemer Chinam and not a Ganav, he would have been exempted from Gneva Vaveda. So if let's say he says Shemer Sachan Ilab, he says, no, what do you mean? Well, you want to know what's by me? It's by me because I was getting paid to watch it for you. Hirosa chayiv is chayiv. Why is he chayiv a carbon? What did he do wrong? Should he put to atzma mishvura mesa? Because by being a shemesacher, he's exempt from einzin. If let's say it breaks or it dies, which as a ganav he would be chayiv. So that lie of that shvu was still getting himself a denial of some type of monetary obligations. Or let's say he even said shoyla nilav, which we know shoyla is chayiv v'naitzin. He says, what do you mean? I was borrowing this from you. He's still chayiv. There's a halacha that a borrower is exempt if the animal, let's say, dies because of the work you're doing with it. And let's say the meat of the animal got inferior because of the work. Because why do you think the guy borrowed it? To do the work with it, not to stand there in the cage. And therefore, if you borrowed someone's car, and during the usage of the car, the carburetor went or whatever, this and that, you're patur. That's mesamach mas malacha. I borrowed it for that. It's not like a oinsin that someone smashed into you. Yeah, that you're chayiv. That's not the essential activity of the thing that you borrowed. But one thing is that we see, says the Gemara, is like this. Alma, we see avagav dahava koyim. Even though, what do you mean? The object is here. He admits it that it's the owner's thing. And right now he's not denying anything. He's admitting, this is yours. Even so, since at the end, maybe the shvu will end up being a denial of money if, let's say, kiven de imignev, if it would have been stolen, b'mayne kokafa, he would be denying money because he would have gotten off the hook by saying Moshe Mechinim when really he would be chayv because he's a ganav. So hashtanami b'mayne kokafa. We see that, we consider that as if he's already now denying money. That's why he chayv a carbon shvua. So says Rabbi Chanami Roso. Avagav, even though in the case that Rabbi was discussing, when you denying the chametz, which is really like admitting it, because the afa ba'amahu, it's anyways not worth anything. It's like dirt. But kiven the mignev, since if it would have been stolen from him, he would have been then obligated in the money. Yeah, he would have to pay to the victim good monies to pay for this Danishes. Comes out that the oath subsequently was effective in getting himself off the hook. So even though now it's not really what he's doing, that now also we would consider as if he's denying money and therefore be chayim. So we see that Rabba's question was really resolved with Rabba that holds that is considered as kafiras mammon, even though right now you're not denying anything and you're saying, because here by the case of the shvur, what are you swearing falsely about? That I didn't steal, who cares? Anyways, you're not giving him back anything. Still, since it technically could lead to a denial of money if someone would steal it from you, so therefore, even now it's considered as that, as we see in Rabbah in a different line of logic, but it's the same idea that if it would get you out of money in some way, right now it's also considered denial of money, and therefore you'd be chayev, let's say for the case of the shvur. Now the Gemara continues and says, which the Gear seems to be Yosef Rabbah, Bava Kama Daf, he was saying over this teaching of Rabbah himself that we just quoted. And Ravam asked on Rabbah from the following brisa. The brisa quotes the pasuk in Vayikra that says, if let's say someone finds a lost object, and he lies to the guy who is the owner, and he's v'nishbal shaka, he swears falsely that he doesn't have the guy's lost object, which he was lying. Now, says the brisa like this. V'chicheshba means that if you were denying the actual item, is prat l'moed be'ikr. That excludes one who admits to the possession of the actual item, but denied it only regarding a possible future claim, as the Gemara explains. Ketzad, says the Brisa, what am I coming to say is excluded from the liability? If let's say a guy tells someone else, says, Shor Ganafti, you stole my ox. One says, look Ganafti, I didn't steal your ox. He says, what do you mean? What's it doing by you? He says, you sold it to me. Which the Gemara later on is going to ask, how is this an illustration of the halacha moed be'ikr, of that you're admitting that the primary thing that it really belongs to that guy, selling it doesn't say it belongs to him, saying selling it belongs to you. But okay, we'll discuss that in a moment. Similarly, let's say it says you gave it to me as a gift, or it's your father who sold it to me, or your father gave it to me as a gift, or this is a more clear case of, he says, well, I was running after my cow. By itself, your cow also came to me. So he's basically saying that I didn't steal it, it's by me, but it's yours. So that's really, he's agreeing to the primary principle. Or Toy B'derech Mitzvah, he says, I just found it wandering and lost on the road, and I brought it to my house, but I was going to give it back to you. Or Shemachin Manilav, these were the cases that we discussed before by Rabbah, which is what we're asking on him from. He says, I was watching it for you for free. Or Shemasach Anelav, what do you mean? You were paying me to watch it. Or Shal Anelav, I had borrowed this cow from you. V'nish b'v'haydim, regarding all these cases, he swore to that effect. And then he actually ends up admitting, he says, it's true, I was lying all along. I wasn't a Shemachin, I wasn't a Shemasach, whatever, I had actually stolen it. Says the Baisa Yachal Yechayv, you would think that he would be liable for swearing falsely. Tam 11, no, it says, V'chichish ba, that if he denies regarding that person's object, that excludes if he admits to the primary object that it is that guy's thing, that he's not going to be liable even though he was denying regarding some possible future claim. So that seems to be not like Rabba's principle that we just said resolved Rabba's question that says that if there is some possible future claim that you're exempting it from, something that you are chayav, the Bride seems to say clearly that you're pater. So Malay, so Rabba responded to him, he says, Tudura, which Rashi says means you got no heart, which I don't know what that means, but on the side of the Gemara, they bring that means meshumim, mean like you're retarded, whatever. Meaning, kitanya hahi, when did we learn that brisa? Is the kamalei halach, where he says, here, it's yours. You can't say, oh, if it would have gotten stolen, that then he would be denying a claim, and therefore we should be mechayiv him. No, because it's here. Take it. There's no possibility of exemption of any future possibilities, let's say, being stolen from him, because it's not. It's right here. He gave it to the guy already. So therefore, he's not really exempting himself from anything by his lie. So therefore, that's why the Brisa says you're going to be pater. Says Rabbi Kikaminu, when did I say my halacha is the kaima ba'agam, where it's in some type of a swamp, and the Gazan first has to retrieve it, in which case there's a possibility for Geneva, and therefore the shvuah was from a minor, because there's a possibility it might end up causing a monetary exemption if it gets stolen from him, and that's why I said that he is going to be chayev for his false shvuah. Now, parenthetically, once we introduce the brisa, the Gemara wants to understand that one of the cases in the Reish of the brisa was, he says, no, I didn't steal it. He says, Atem acharteli. He says, you sold it to me, or you gave me as a gift, or your father sold it to me, your father gave it to me as a gift. He says, my might be ikka. What? Where do you have over here an admission to the principle? That's not the same case as saying I'm a shomer that is yours, but I was just watching if I didn't steal it. Here you're saying that you sold it to me. That is stealing the primary, not through stealing, but through fabricated stories. It says Gemara, lo yitzricha, no, it's necessary where the Amalei, this Ganav said to the owner, lo nesati lecha damei. Yes, you sold to me, but I never paid you yet. Shalkatorcha vazil. Take your ox and leave. So essentially, is a moed be'ikr, he was admitting, I didn't steal it, so yeah, I bought it, but I didn't pay, so take it back. Or let's say the other case was at nesatili. You gave it to me, avicha nasli, your father gave it to me. So here you can't say regarding paying because he's saying it was a gift. So my might be ikra. What is he admitting to? Saying you gifted it to me, I have no responsibility. So isn't he denying it? Says similarly, the Amalei says to him, why do you give it to me as a gift? On the condition that I did for you a certain favor. I didn't do it to you. Take your ox and go. So he's essentially, again, admitting that it's yours. Take it, because I didn't do you that favor. So, again, he's not. That's why it's still Moed Be'ikr. One of the other cases was Toy B'derech Mitzasab. It says, I found it on the road wandering. And that's why I have it. So says the Malema, why doesn't the owner tell him, you should have returned it to me. When you found it, you shouldn't have brought it to your house, because you knew that it was mine. So there's no bigger ganav than that. So how is that a claim of Moed Be'ikr? So the father Shmuel said, it's talking about where he says, Shvua Aved Mitzasi. He says, I swear I found a lost object. I didn't know that it was yours to return it to you. And therefore that's why he's, again, admitting and not denying with his claim of saying that I found it lost on the road. Now, once we introduced this idea of swearing falsely of a Aveda, so the Gemara is telling the Brisa, Amma Ben Azeh. Ben Azeh says, Gimel Shvuasein. There are 3 types of an oath that apply to testimony of a lost object, where if, let's say, someone makes a witness swear, if you saw my lost object, and the witness says, no, I didn't see it. And he swears to that effect. And then afterwards he admits, he says, no, it's not true, I did know. I knew where your lost object was. What are the 3 types of oath? Hikrba v'lo b'maitza. That is, the witness, he recognized that it's that guy's object, but he didn't recognize the guy who found the lost object. Meaning, he says that he saw it where it was going in someone else's property, but he doesn't know who the guy was. That's one case. Or he admits that he recognized, after he swore falsely, he admits that he recognized b'maitza v'lo ba. He recognized the guy who found it, but he didn't know whose lost object it was. So he should have said, that guy found the lost object, but I don't know if it's yours. And this is all talking about with Eid Echad, with it's one witness. And the third case is Leiba v'leiba Maitza. He didn't recognize not the lost object and not the guy who found it. So he wants to wait a second. That last case doesn't make sense. Leiba v'leiba Maitza, he admits that he didn't know, after he swore falsely, he admits that he didn't know what the lost object was and who the one who found it. Well, Kushtish Tabei, then he was swearing truthfully because he doesn't know anything. So Amos says, no, the third case is the opposite. Ba'oba Maitza. He admits that he knew the lost object, he knew the one who found it, and therefore he swore falsely when he had said that he doesn't know about this guy's lost object. Okay, that's what the Brisa says. Now, it says the Gemara, Lamai Hilchasa, for what halacha are you talking about these three oaths of the guy who finds a lost object? So it's actually machlik is what the point of the Brisa is. Rabbi Ami Omer Reb Chanina says liftar, meaning it's coming to tell us that for all these cases, this one witness who swore falsely and then admitted would be pater for his false oath. Ushmul Amr says no, the other way. He says l'chiyuv. Oh, so we can discuss in a second. Shmuel says that no, it's coming to tell you that he's going to be chayiv for swearing falsely. So the Gemara explains to answer your question. It's the machlek is the following tanoim. The time like learn the brisa. Hamishbia eid echad. If someone makes a singular witness take an oath, and he denies, and he says an oath that I don't know testimony for you, pater, that one witness is exempt from a carbon of what's called shvuas ha'edus. When you swear falsely as an oath that you don't know testimony, you really do know, you have a carbon shvua. When it's an eid echad, says the Tana Kama, you're going to be pater. Why? Because even had he testified for that guy, he would not have obligated the defendant but an oath. Now, even though you could say that maybe the guy would not want to swear, all that is a gorim lamaman. That means to say he's causing the guy monetary loss by not making the guy take an oath. So you'd be pater, and here also it's a gorim lamaman. So meaning there also it's not really incriminating the guy. It's like it's causing the guy to get money. Here by not testifying, it's a grama. It's an indirect cause of making the guy not have his money. He says no. He says you're going to be chayiv. Says what are they disagreeing about? That's the same principle over here regarding benazai, regarding eid echad, regarding the shvu if he knew about the lost object or not. So the Gemara says Mar Savar B'Lazber Shimon held Davagram Lamaman, something that causes money, meaning. Let's say the case of when he knew about the lost object, but he didn't know the guy who found the lost object. Had he testified to him and said, "Oh, I saw it in that corner, but I don't know who found it," so the guy would go walking around that neighborhood until he would find out for sure. In the case of let's say he knew the guy who found it, and but not the lost object. That's a goyim the moment. It's not literally money itself. He didn't cause him a loss because. Even had he testified for him, said that, we saw it, that guy found it, that guy could say, yeah, but there was an einus that ruined it for me. And he would exempt himself from taking from an oath, so it wouldn't necessarily be actual money that he would get for him. So at the most it would be a goyim lamaman. Oh, but he holds kamam dummy. That's like money itself. So therefore the witness who did not testify is chayiv because he caused a monetary loss by not testifying for this guy to be able to get his lost object. But Master Tani Kama held no love kamam dummy. It's not like money. It's only goyim the money, and therefore the guy who didn't testify is not going to be obligated for his shvua for saying falsely. Oh, it says the Gemara, that's the machlokes between Shmuel and Rav Chizda, which is the same idea of right. This is no. So this is the machlokes between Reb Chanina and Shmuel, which is they wanted to know how do you interpret the brisa of these cases of the Gimel Shavuos when the guy swore falsely and then he admits, he says, "Oh, I knew who found it, or I knew the object, or I knew both of them." So, what's the halacha? Reb Chanina held, yeah, you're going to be pater. Why? Because he holds like the man da amadavagam lamaman is lav kamamadami. Shmuel holds the vagam lamaman is kamamadami, and therefore that's why you're going to be chayiv. Now, relating to the pasuk that we brought down before, the Gemara introduces the following halacha. Amar Rav Sheshes, hakoifer bepekad. Someone denies something of the positive. Someone asked him to watch, and then witnesses come along and say, well, "You have it." So Naslav Gazlan. So that means to say the moment he made a denial, he became a Gazlan, and even though he didn't swear, and from that point onwards, he doesn't have halacha of Hashem Echinim anymore, and rather he's going to be v'chayev b'inzin. If anything, even the this happens, he's going to be liable because, like a Gazlan, he's liable. And Matana Tuna, we learned in the Bryce that says the same idea. It says in the pasuk v'chichishba, which we recorded this before. If the guy finds a lost object and he denies regarding it and he swears falsely, lamanu einish. So this is a little hard to read over here. Rashi changes a little the gears over here. We learn the punishment because it says right after that v'heshav esagzela. He has to return the stolen object. So obviously we say that it's already in his possession from the moment that he makes a denial until he returns it, and that is the punishment that even if an einus happens, he's going to be liable. The question is ashar minayin. We always know that the Gemara often asks that for a liability to happen, you have to have also the Torah warning you about it, which is called the Hazara. Where's the Hazara said? It says in the pasuk, and Vayikra says like tigneivu v'lo yischachashu, and not to deny. So from there is where we learn out of the warning regarding this v'chichishba.
That's a sufficient warning?
Yes, the Torah. No, the Torah is warning. The Torah says
yeah, but it says
it's v'lo yischachashu.
and you're not chayav till you have people.
No, we have two psukim. We have one pasuk talk about the einish. This is b'chal einish and Hazara. We find this throughout the Gemara.
You're saying the Asara is
Not Asra, Azhara. The Torah is warning. The Torah has to tell you not to do something. The Torah tells you to shakal lulav. The Torah has to tell you, not to hit your father. And then you could get a pasuk that tells you the punishment of hitting the father. So here, where the pasuk tells you v'chichishba, if you deny, so then you're going to be chayiv to return the gzela. Where does the Torah tell you not to do this? The Torah tells you by lo yischachashu, don't make a denial. Now, the Gemara, however, wants to prove something. My love, isn't this, says the Gemara, to support Rav Sheshes, la'einish mammon? That's the girsa we have in our Gemara. Rashi's girsa is, my love, einish kfira? Isn't this the punishment of the denial? In other words, it's the punishment of what? Isn't it that he's getting punished for the denial itself from the chahakchasha, that he's chayiv an einzin, even though he didn't swear yet? And it's going to be a second punishment of the chaimish on the shvua. Here, it's a punishment on its own for just denial, that you chayiv an einzin. So that supports Rav Sheshes, who says by making a denial, you already consider it as a gazel. Says Gemara, no. This punishment that the pasuk is punishing him to be liable in einzin is la'einish shvua, is because of his false oath. But if he doesn't swear, no, it's not true. We could say nalik Rav Sheshes. Then he wouldn't be chayiv for, so to speak, his gezela. Says the Gemara, how could you say that? Homegtani sefer, but since the next case of the brisa was talking about the ishtabeya, that you did swear, the inference is that the ratio is talking about where you didn't swear, and again, you just made a denial, and that it would be like Rav Sheshes. Because the Tani Sefer, what does the Brisa continue? It says, "V'nishbal sheker," and if a guy swears falsely, which is the words of the pasuk that we have after the words v'chichesh, but it says "v'nishbal sheker," and he swears falsely. Lamanu einish. So we learn from here that a punishment, because it says after that the halach of chaimish, of adding a fifth, and a carbon asham. Ashar minayin. Where do we know anything about the Torah warning you not to swear falsely? Because Tamalim, it says the pasuk. Again, in that same pasuk in Vayikra of Lo Tiknevu L'Tzachshur, it says V'lo Yisashakaru, not to lie, which that's a warning regarding saying a false oath, which it says near that Lo Yisashavu B'Shmi L'Sheker, don't swear in my name falsely, and from Lo Yisashakaru we learn out that it's an oath of denial of money that we're talking about, because it says Ish B'Misai, a man and his friend, like v'chichesh ba'misai, by pekadon, so we understand that it's a denial of money, and the Torah is telling you that not to swear falsely. But one thing is we see when they say for the shtabeh, and the fact that the end of the brisa, which on the next words of the pasuk is talking about regarding when you did swear, reisha delay shtabeh, the inference would be that the reisha is talking about where you didn't swear. So similarly, that is like Rav Sheshes, that just the denial is the liability, not a denial with an oath. They said no, it's not true. Both cases are talking about Akasha and the Shvuas al Sheker are both talking about with an oath. So why the redundancy? Khan over here, the Sefer is Shahida, where he admits after he swears falsely. Where then there's the liability of a Chaimish and a Karban Asha. Khan, the Reish is talking about Shabo Eidim, where witnesses came. Also Eidim witnesses come Chayab Einzin. Yes, because of your Akasha, you're ready like a gazan, you're liable for einzin. If the guy admitted after that he swore falsely, chayav b'keren v'chemesh v'ashim, he'll be liable for the principal, a fifth, and the carbon ashim. So those are two different halachas, but therefore there's no riot to Rav Sheshes from over here, because it's not talking about just with the hakasha that you're being chayav. You could say it's hakasha with a shvua, and the reason why he repeats it two times is because one is talking about with Eidim, one is talking about where he admits it on his own. So, Masav Rami Bava Kama. Now, the Gemara asks a question on Rav Sheshes from a Mishnah Mesechta Shvuas of Emdal Beis. This Mishnah is on the halacha of what's called Nishboin V'Neitlin. Usually what happens is that when you have a situation of doubt, the defendant swears and he's released from the prosecution. There are certain exemptions that we say that no, the claimant swears and he collects. And this is one of them, which is if the defendant is suspected regarding the halacha of oaths. So if someone owed his friend a shvua, but is suspected regarding oaths because he had lied under oath, so then we say in this case the collector, he swears and he collects. So says the Mishnah Ketzad, how so? So echad, whether he's suspected on shvuas edus for an oath regarding that he said that he didn't know testimony of something, or ve'echad, whether he swore regarding shvuas apakadon, he swore falsely regarding a deposit, which we see that he swore falsely because he really had the deposit by him. And v'afila, even if he was only suspected regarding a shvuas shav, just a regular false oath that didn't have any denial of money related to it, which is only wicked to heaven, but he wasn't wicked to people, he's still invalid regarding taking an oath related to money, and therefore the collector is going to swear and not the defendant. That's what the Mishnah says. Says the Gemara of Isa. Now, if Rav Sheish halacha was true, that the moment he makes his denial, he's a gazlan, so why do we have to say regarding these cases, which sounds like that he's not invalidated until he takes an oath, like all the other cases? What do you mean? The denial already becomes possible because of gazlan. Why do you have to say that the shvuas apekadon, the denial of the pekadon already makes you into a gazlan, and already you should be puzzled because of the denial? What do you need the shvuah for? Says Amri, they said, what do you mean? You think Rav Sheshes said, for example, will witnesses say that when he was denying it, it was in his possession? Here what we're talking about is the koi ba'agam. It was in the swamp. The lav kfiruhu. That's not denial. The Saba, he thinks that ishtamitnale adazilna umaysinale. He says that, okay, that, he was only trying to buy himself time where you could say that he was just getting off until he could bring it, he's not invalidated without an oath. He just wanted to say, oh, whatever, it's not true, whatever, so he can go get the item. And the Gemara says, but if he made an oath, well, that's when he's going to be puzzled. Rav Sheshis was talking about a case that it was right there, not like when it was somewhere else. And Teda, you should know this differentiation because the Amar Vidbar Oven, he says, a kaifa b'milva. Someone denies alone, and he doesn't swear, but he says, it's not true, you didn't lend me any money. And then witnesses come, Allah is kashala edus. That denier is going to be valid for testimony. Why? Isn't he a liar regarding monies? Because milva leitzah, no, loaned money was meant to be spent, and he doesn't have it right now. So this that he's denying it, he's not really trying to not pay the guy. He just wanted to push him away until he gets the money. Because the guy said, yes, you owe me, I'm going to take collateral. It doesn't want that. I'll pay you back, but he has to deny just to buy time. But he continued to have kavav man aleph, but because by a deposit, which the Gemara in the beginning of Shnayim Eichs and Bava Metzia, which we're going to see soon in Yitzhak Hashem, says, is, for example, where it's talking about where the witnesses said that the moment that he denied it, that deposit, which is supposed to be there, he's not supposed to lose it, was in his hand. Oh, and the guy denied it, then Pasala Edis, then he's going to be invalid for testimony because, and that's even if he didn't swear, which is exactly what Rav Sheshes is. Because if he would swear, who cares if it's a loan or it's a deposit, you're swearing falsely. So we see this principle that it depends if the item is around or not, to say if that would make you into Gazlan or not. And that's would answer the question that Rabbi Chama had on Rav Sheshes. Yes, although the Mishnah is telling us that for a guy to be suspected that we're not going to let him swear is going to be specifically if he swore falsely once before. Why? Just the denial should be enough. No, that's talking about where it was in an agam, in the swamp. That denial would not make it in the Gazlan. Rav Sheshes is talking about more like the case of a Pakadin, where then you would be Pasla Edis, whereas the Bryce is talking about more like the case, the Mishnah is talking about more like the case of a Kaviv B'milva, which it's not here, then you are Kashla Edis because you're just pushing the guy off. Think to any time. Close to us.